You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. Our goal is to get 20,000 of our fans contributing $50 each for the whole year. You can make this possible. Roland Martin Unfiltered. In case you forgot, here's a look at what Donald Trump has been doing for the past 2 months.
We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China.
It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle. It will disappear.
Our numbers are lower than just about anybody.
Yeah, no, I don't take responsibility at all.
The people coming in from China, where this all started, it could have been stopped right where it came from, China. It came from China. It got out of control.
If you think about Governor Cuomo, we're building him 4 hospitals. He's supposed to be buying his own ventilators. We're going to help.
People like Governor Inslee, he should be doing more. He shouldn't be relying on the federal government. Governor Inslee, that's the state of Washington.
Don't call the woman in Michigan. All she does is she has no idea what's going on, and all she does is say, oh, it's the federal government's fault, and we've taken such great care of Michigan. We inherited, this administration inherited a broken system.
The original tests, the ones we inherited, Jim, as an example, they were broken, they were obsolete. And you remember we inherited a broken system. We inherited a broken system. WHO, that's the World Health Organization, they missed the call. World Health got it wrong. I mean, they got it very wrong. In many ways, they were wrong. I'm not happy with the World Health Organization. The reality is that the WHO failed to adequately obtain, vet, and share information in a timely and transparent fashion. It would have been so easy to be truthful. The coronavirus, you know that, right? Coronavirus. And this is their new hoax. And the 15 within a couple of days is going to be down to close to 0.
Well, we now know those deaths are a lot higher. Now, of course, folks at Fox News, I mean, they're just quite genius, okay, because, you know, they just love to talk about what's going on here. So before I play for you what Dr. Phil said, so check this out. So Dr. Anthony Fauci was on Laura Ingram's show, and if y'all want to see how she is not the brightest bulb in a dark room, listen to this idiotic question and just watch the facial response of Dr. Fauci. Folks, go right to it here.
Area where you have very few people.
Question of a vaccine.
Hold on one second. Come back to me.
people.
Come back to me. All right. So let me go ahead and clear some audio here. There are a couple of things that are going. This is, first of all, when you see this video, I saw it, and if you want to understand why these nuts are running around the country holding these protests, it's because they're watching Fox News and they are literally feeding these nuts. And if y'all just want to kill yourselves, go right ahead. But that's pretty much what y'all doing. Okay, here we go. Check this out.
Dr. Fauci, on the question of a vaccine, we don't have a vaccine for SARS. I mean, they got close in mice. We don't have a vaccine for HIV. And life did go on, right? So the idea that we're definitely going to have a vaccine, we didn't really approach much else in the same way as we're pegging going back to normal with a vaccine. Did we?
Well, no, but Laura, this is different. HIV/AIDS is entirely different. We don't have a vaccine for HIV/AIDS, but we have spectacularly effective treatment. People who invariably would have died years ago right now are leading essentially normal lives. SARS is a different story. SARS disappeared. We developed a vaccine. We were in the process of going through the various phases. We showed it was safe. We showed it induced a good response. And then SARS disappeared. And we didn't need to develop a vaccine for SARS. So I think it's a little bit misleading maybe to compare what we're going through now with HIV or SARS. They're really different.
But we don't know. This could disappear. I mean, SARS did pretty much disappear. This could as well, correct?
Yeah. You know, anything could, Laura, but I have to tell you, the degree of efficiency of transmissibility of this is really unprecedented in anything that I've seen. It's an extraordinarily efficient virus in transmitting from one person to another. Those kind of viruses don't just disappear.
Okay.
Then the next night, they called Dr. Phil. Y'all go ahead.
250 people a year die from poverty. And the poverty line is getting such that more and more people are going to fall below that because the economy is crashing around us. And they're doing that because people are dying from the coronavirus. I get that. But look, the fact of the matter is we have people dying. 45,000 people a year die from automobile accidents, 480,000 from cigarettes, 360,000 a year from swimming pools. But we don't shut the country down for that. But yet we're doing it for this. And the fallout is going to last for years because people's lives are being destroyed.
And
y'all know he's not a medical doctor. Y'all also know he gave up his license in Texas. My panel, Tiffany Dina Lofton, Director, NAACP Youth and College Division, Dr. Chris Metzler, Conservative Analyst, Law and Victoria Burke, National Newspaper Publishers Association. Chris, what the hell? I mean, seriously, Laura Ingram's actually saying, well, we did have a vaccine for HIV/AIDS. Chris, a bus driver in Michigan is dead because a woman coughed.
Right.
He got coronavirus. He was dead 2 weeks later. There are no stories ever of someone having sex and getting HIV or AIDS and they're dead 2 weeks later. What the hell is wrong with these people?
Well, first of all, the comparison is just simply ridiculous. I mean, one of the things that I do is I own a number of medical companies. We do COVID testing every day. If you look at the virology of this, it is not, that is like comparing apples to eggs here. That is simply not a valid comparison. And then to have doctors, I'm not sure why Dr. Phil was supposed to counter Dr. Fauci.
Right.
I'm completely confused.
We've got Dr. Phil, Dr. Oz, what's the other doctor? Dr. Drew, and then Dr. Drew screws up. He got to apologize. Oz got to apologize. Then Dr. Phil, who don't know jack about medicine. First of all, he said 250 people die each year of poverty. It's 250,000. He then said 360,000 die swimming pool accidents. No, it's 3,500. But here's the other deal, Chris. If you keep saying, well, here are X Americans who died because of cigarettes. I don't smoke.
Those are false. Those are false choices.
But I can die of coronavirus.
Yeah, those are simply false choices. Look, if you want to have a discussion about the economy, have those discussions. If you want to have a conversation about craziness, you can talk to Dr. Phil about that. But when you're talking about science here and when you're talking about biology here, those are simply not the appropriate guests in a situation like that. Because what it further does, and this is the problem that we're finding, what it further does is it simply confuses. It confuses the process.
Yeah, it does. And that, Tiffany, is why you've got these idiots in Michigan who are protesting with their Trump flags and their Confederate flags. Those seem to go together. And all this sort of stuff. They actually blocked an ambulance. They actually blocked an ambulance from being able to do the work. Then I'm talking to my parents today, and this dumbass woman in Texas, I don't care if I catch coronavirus. I don't care if I die. I want my liberty. Your ass ain't got no liberty or no freedom if you dead. The governor of Michigan, Tiffany, said, take your pick. You want 6 feet apart or 6 feet under?
That's the two options that you have. Let's be very clear, Roland. As of right now, nobody should be calling him Dr. Phil anymore. His name is Phil. He has been removed from his title and privileges of being called doctor. That's number one. Number two is, if we pay attention to the dog whistling in his comments, he said folks die from poverty and folks are dying from coronavirus. And the folks who are mostly impacted by both of those issues are poor people and people of color. Dr. Phil, I looked it up when you were playing the tape. His salary is $80 million and his net worth is $440 million. He ain't got to worry about neither one of those issues. But poor people and people of color do. And so for him to have the mental strength to come on TV and say, this is not a big deal, it's just like poverty. Poor people die from poverty all the time, and people die from coronavirus, goes to show you not only his white privilege, but also we are removing his title as doctor, period. Our folks need to take this seriously. Roland, my mother has been let off from both of her jobs and lives in Los Angeles, California. There are 22 million people who have lost their job because of this, and folks are taking it seriously. Now, back to what you said really quickly about Donald Trump and Governor Cuomo. It looks like two parents who separated, who are not trying to take responsibility for their kids, but still have to do their job and do the work to take care of the people that they serve. And this is why elections in November are so important, because at the end of the day, the folks who are making the decisions about the stimulus packages, our health care, our schools shutting down, our jobs, your $1,200 check that you're going to get with Donald Trump's name on it, et cetera, all of that is coming from people that we are voting for or that we choose not to vote for. And that's why November is so important. And we got to remove Donald Trump from office.
But
period.
Lauren, so now all of a sudden, Phil worries about the poverty? Now all of a sudden, there's a concern? And somebody might be who's watching, and I'm looking at your comments on Facebook, YouTube, Periscope. You know, oh, that's Fox News. Y'all, but here's the problem. This is even broader. It's so many in conservative media. Michael Savage, okay, you will never, ever in your life hear me say anything positive about Michael Savage. But I'm reading the New York Times, Lauren, and Michael Savage is going, y'all are idiots listening to Sean Hannity, who he mockingly calls Dr. Hannity, and right. Dr. Limbaugh. Why? Because Michael Savage, even though he's a nut, has a PhD and studied epidemiology. Right. He's been screaming, y'all, this thing is real. But you have conservative media who is just waving a flag, oh, this is blown out of proportion. And the problem is, Lauren, they are talking to lawmakers and governors and state reps and state senators right. and members of Congress and business leaders, and they're listening to these nuts.
Okay. Yeah, well, what's actually going on here is just the Fox News game of protecting Donald Trump. And the reason that, of course, Trump doesn't want to do more testing is he doesn't want to find out that the numbers are bigger than they actually are. The reason that you have Dr. Phil somehow sitting there crossing Dr. Fauci is they're trying to message it's no big deal, it's no big deal, it's no big deal. And they're also trying to message that, of course, closing our businesses and closing down our way of life is something that somehow is a decision that is hurting Trump, but is made by other people. That's why you have all this stuff about the governors. So, as Tiffany just said, it's like 22 million people filing for unemployment. We have 110,000 businesses that are going out of business as we speak. But this is all messaging. It's all PR. It's all following the Pied Piper of Donald Trump down the road to nowhere because he is doing PR. He is not doing public policy. He's not interested in public policy. The people he hires in the White House are not interested in public policy. They're interested in getting past the next PR moment, and they're in huge trouble. I think, frankly, I will be absolutely shocked if he wins this election. This entire thing is him. It's him not reading his intel report in January and talking about vaping, okay? It's him not preparing the country for this pandemic. He can't blame it on anybody else. And no amount of PR and no amount of dancing around is going to change that because now we have, 35,000 people dead in a month? And all because we weren't prepared, because we didn't prepare early enough, because he wanted to fool around and act like this was no big deal. Them acting like it's no big deal is their attempt to try to save Donald Trump from the inevitable reality that nobody is going to ignore at the end of this when we end up with 50 or 60,000 people in the end, dead because of COVID.
The thing that's crazy, Chris, is if you look at numbers, and so go to my computer, please. This was tweeted today by John Harwood. He, first of all, Gallup numbers. Chris, Trump approval numbers, white non-college youth, 18-29 is 43% approved. Everybody else under 30, 21%. Then this other poll, Gallup poll on how Americans rate Trump's performance as president. Whites without college degrees, 61% approved, 37% disapproved. Everybody else, 31% approved, 64% disapproved. Chris, here's what is crazy. No president wants a moment like this. But it's moments like this that actually can solidify you steamrolling your competition or you're actually losing. Mm-hmm. For him to, he is pretty much saying, yeah, federal government, we're done. States, y'all go right ahead. As opposed to states, we've got this for you. We've got this. I've enacted the National Defense Production Act. We're sitting here. Oh, no, companies, you're not going to be charging us $15 per PPE when you were charging $5. He wouldn't say to DuPont, we're going to pay for the chartered flight to send your stuff overseas to get stitched together and then bring it back, and then you're going to sell back to us 60% of the stuff you made when we just paid for your chartered flight. No, he would, if a real leader would have come out and said, the no-bid contract that bankrupt company out of Virginia got to $55 million for masks, no, we canceled that contract. The American public, the numbers would go through the roof. This idiot, Chris, does not want the responsibility because he wants to be able to say, I had nothing to do with it. Y'all can't blame me.
Well, and the unfortunate thing about this from a political standpoint is this. The whole coronavirus thing, it seems to me, and particularly in some conservative circles, it seems to me that the conversation is it's an either-or strategy. It actually is a both-and strategy. And here's what I mean by that. You do the testing very early. You figure out what the numbers are so that when testing is actually done, the numbers don't skyrocket and look like you've done absolutely nothing.
But Chris, remember though, in the beginning, he didn't want to do it. He actually said, yeah, we didn't want to bring them off the ship because the numbers would have increased. He basically said what you just said. And so this whole time, Donald Trump has not wanted to actually do massive testing because he doesn't want to see a big number. And here's what's so dumb about this. If you actually do mass testing, and even if it's a big number, it actually benefits you because you did mass testing.
Right.
Well, right. Precisely. It does. And then if you look at some of the attempts, there was all this discussion about disparities relative to testing. For example, in New York City, where, I don't know, a large percentage of people don't have cars, you're only doing drive-up testing. Same thing in some parts of Florida. They don't drive. How are they going to get there? So it's all of those kinds of things. The calculation here, I'm not sure is the right calculation.
At the end,
sure. No, this was the wrong calculation. It was the wrong calculation. It was the wrong calculation. Let's be very clear, Roland. The numbers that you just showed are so important for us to pay attention to. Not because we have to speak to the choir. The people, the 61% of folks who are still approving Donald Trump, those are the angry, racist supporters who are still going to come out during the elections in November who want to see him get reelected. And his rhetoric, I wonder, just as a case study, what it would be like if Fox News played the video that you just played from January all the way to April with the different scenarios of what he was understanding COVID-19 to escalate as and how he decided to respond to it. Because what he has done is again, it's like two parents who can't get along, who state governors and the president who are victim blaming each other to say, you're not doing enough, you're not thanking me enough, you were supposed to do this, you didn't do that, when really we all have to do what's best for the people, period. And Donald Trump does not want to take responsibility. He never wanted to be at fault. I actually disagree. I think he likes being on TV and getting all the attention that he's getting.
Oh, he does.
I think that he loves having press conferences every day to waste all of our time. He likes shaming and embarrassing and insulting the reporters who are coming to the news press conference to ask him real questions. He enjoys the attention. Let's not get confused. But the problem is not that we know he's an idiot. The problem is the narrative that he has told and the way that he has unrolled this blame shifting strategy keeps his voters engaged, and he knows because he's running again, that's what's going to help him in November. So Fox News, which has never gotten its act together, needs to tell the truth to save its people, and the people who still support Donald Trump need to get their act together because this is going to impact them just as much as it's impacting everybody else. And
of course, Lauren, you have this idiot tweeting to people to basically rise up in Minnesota, in Michigan, in Virginia.
Yeah. He's trying to get the organic support, the grassroots support to put the pressure on governors that, frankly, he wants to control in terms of opening the government so the economy can get back on its feet and he won't get blamed for a bad economy in the election. The whole thing is PR, as usual with him. The reason he does the daily press conference is that's his messaging. He gets to stand up there and lie. Millions of people see him lying, and he knows that. And he knows the networks are, for some reason or another, they're starting to figure it out.
Hold tight 1 second. Right now, Dr. Anthony Fauci is actually speaking at the White House news conference. Let's go live to the White House.
Answer the question that we've been asked a lot. In fact, we had a very productive teleconference with the Senate Democratic Caucus just a few hours ago. And they asked a number of questions, which were really reasonable questions, questions that are on the mind of a lot of different people. And one of them was the question that was just posed a moment ago, is are there enough tests to allow us to be able to go through this first phase in a way that is protective of the health and the safety of the American people? So I just want to spend a couple of minutes clarifying a few things and maybe providing some information on a broad 40,000 foot, which you'll hear some of the more granular details from my colleagues who will be following me. I think they asked me to give the 40,000 foot one because I'm not a testing person. I didn't run a testing lab, but I'm part of a team that is looking at this, of how we can best make sure this happens in the right way. So first of all, let me say something that we've said before, and I apologize if I'm repeating things that you already know, but I think in some respects it's important to do that so that people have clarity in what we're talking about. There are two general types of tests, even though within each general type there are different subgroups. One of them is to actually test for the infection. Is a person infected? The other, and I'll get back to that in a second, the other is to test, as was just mentioned, if someone has been infected. Usually someone has been infected who has recovered, and as I'll get to in a moment, that you could assume, although we need to do some more work on that, that person is actually protected against subsequent exposure and infection with an identical organism. So what are some of the pluses and minuses of each? Because the pluses and minuses are really going to impact how we best use the test and how the test actually should be used. So let's take the test for whether or not you're infected. The test of whether or not you're infected is a test that right now is called a nucleic acid test. It's not an easy test to do. There are some that are more rapid. There are some that have a high throughput. There are different groups within that. The good news about that is that it's a sensitive and specific test, so that if you're infected, you know you're infected, so that, as I'll get to in a moment, if you need to do something with that, get that person, put them in care, take care of them, get them out of circulation, that's important. The part about that I think is often misunderstood is that if you get a test today, like I did today, it's negative. If you get a test today, that does not mean that tomorrow or the next day or the next day or the next day, as you get exposed perhaps from someone who may not even know they're infected, that means that I'm negative, which means if you take that to its extreme, in order to be really sure, you would almost have to test somebody either every day or every other day or every week or what it is to be absolutely certain. That's an issue. Now, the problem that I talk about when I try and compare this to other situations with what testing means to you. As I think most people know, have been involved in HIV/AIDS for 38 years, 39 years, from the very first week of HIV. So that's what I do. If you get a test for HIV and you are negative and you do not practice any risk behaviors, you can be guaranteed that next month, 6 months, 1 year from now, you will be negative if you don't have a risk behavior. So there's a big difference there about what testing actually means. So the point I think you're getting is that although there is clearly a place for needing to test somebody for a given reason, a test means you're negative now. Now, the other test is an antibody test, a test that tells you, in fact, that you've been infected. That's really good. You're going to hear a bit about that from my colleagues in a moment, because that will give you a broader view of two things. One, what the penetrance of the infection had been. And number two, you can make an assumption, though we still need to prove that. I mean, we are assuming that if you're infected and you have antibody, you're protected. And I think that's a reasonable assumption based on our experience with other viruses. But what we want to make sure that we know, and these are some of the challenges, what is the titer that is protective? How long is the protection? Is it 1 month? Is it 3 months? Is it 6 months? It's a year. So we need to be humble and modest that we don't know everything about it, but it really is an important test. The other thing is the difference between testing and monitoring out there, what's out there. The difference between what we really need it for phase 1 is to be able to identify, isolate, contact trace, a very important part of when you're pulling back gradually and slowly on the mitigation, and you have people who might be infected. You want to know they're infected. You want to put them in care. That is something that we absolutely need to do. But there are other ways. I want to make sure people understand that not to underestimate the importance of testing. Testing is a part, an important part, of a multifaceted way that we are going to control and ultimately end this outbreak. So please don't anyone interpret it that I'm downplaying testing. But the emphasis that we've been hearing is essentially testing is everything, and it isn't. It's the kinds of things that we've been doing, the mitigation strategies that are an important part of that. Now, just a couple of things before I hand it over to my colleagues. No doubt that early on we had a problem. I have publicly said that we had a problem early on. There was a problem that had to be corrected, and it was corrected. It was a problem that was a technical problem from within that was corrected, and it was an issue of embracing the way we have now and should have the private sector, who clearly has the capability of making and providing tests at the level that we will need them for any of the things that I've just spoken about. So, having said that, right now, I totally understand, and I'm not alone, my colleagues understand, that although we say there are X number of tests out there, and you're going to hear from Admiral Giroir about that, the fact is there have been and still are situations that are correctable and will be corrected, and some of which have been corrected. I know I get on the phone a lot with my colleagues because, believe it or not, some long time ago, I was where they are, in the hospitals, in the emergency room, looking at very sick individuals that you need to take care of. And I know what it means when someone tells you, hey, you have what you need, and you look around and you say, well, maybe you think I have what I need, but I don't really have what I need. So we have to figure out, how do we close that gap? And there are a lot of things that I think we've learned and that we are correcting and going to correct. Namely, you have a situation where tests are needed and appropriate, and either people have found there's no tests, or there's no reagents, or there's no swabs, or a person needed a test and were told that there was a restriction. They couldn't get a test. These are all the things that I'm telling you, you already know because you've heard them. So right now, or there's a delay of 5 to 7 days. And what does that mean if you want to get somebody out of circulation? We understand that that existed, but upon careful examination, what you are going to hear, that many of those have been already corrected and other of those will be corrected. Because what I think people don't appreciate through no fault of their own is that there are two issues. There's supply and demand. And if you have a supply that can meet the demand, but the supply is not connected to demand, then supply-demand falls apart. What do I mean by that? I mean there is existing capacity that we have that for one reason or other maybe has not been fully communicated as to the availability of that existing capacity, and you're going to hear about that now. There's production capacity that gets better and better and better. And that's what we're talking about, because for what we need now, we believe that with better communications, we'll be able to make that happen. So I know there's going to be a lot of questions about that. I don't want to go on too long, but let me just finish by saying.
Okay, Chris Metzler, I just need you to explain something to me right there. We need a better communication. You have a task force briefing to the world every day. Is that not? I'm just. You have a televised briefing. You've got a dude tweeting his ratings
every day.
You've got, Chris, the federal apparatus. I mean, do we need to hire a communications intern, Chris? Is Chris there? Okay, Chris is gone.
He needs better communication.
Tiffany, what the hell?
Yeah, he might need a few interns. That's what they need. You got every day a press conference. He just got finished tweeting again a couple minutes ago. He tweets all the time around the clock. I'm not exactly sure what he means by better communication. You know what it is? Maybe he meant him and the president need to have better communication because the president's not understanding his recommendations of what he's saying. And it has been so long that this pandemic has gotten worse that he's trying to send us a message that Donald Trump is not listening and he needs better communication. Because there's no possible way at all that the communication to us has not been clear. It doesn't make any sense.
Lauren, I'm not quite understanding. So was Fauci saying we have lots of supply and no one knows we have supplies? So can y'all please spread the word and send a text and holler at your friend?
They know, there's no mistakes with communication and Donald Trump. Donald Trump is communicating exactly what Donald Trump wants to communicate. And what Donald Trump wants to communicate is that everything is great. We're going to open the country on May 1, and we're going to open in tears, and we're going to get back to where we were. He wants to communicate that because he knows that he has an election in November. He knows that he's got to get things back to where they were and sort of try to figure out a way that he doesn't get blamed for this, which is going to happen anyway. He's communicating exactly what he wants to communicate. Fauci has a problem because, of course, when Fauci tells the truth, that's a problem for his crazy boss, which is why every time they do a conference call, they do these White House task force conference calls like you referred to earlier, Roland, with members of Congress, with governors, et cetera, and so on. And Fauci has to talk in code. And Fauci has to talk in code because he knows that the fools that he works for will likely fire him if he starts telling the clear-throated truth from a medical standpoint about what's going on. Donald Trump is really good at communication. One thing is about him is that he's stupid, but he's not dumb. I mean, he's not a smart man when it comes to the details of anything with regard to policy, but he's very smart when it comes to communication strategy. He knows how to change the subject off into nonsense. He knows that everybody's watching him. He can repeat lies over and over again. And he sort of practices the old adage of if you repeat a lie long enough, people will believe it. And in our elections, there's a certain percentage that'll vote for him no matter what. There's a certain percentage of people who vote red and blue no matter what, no matter who it is. He's aware of that. And he's going to have to probably lie his way through this because the reality is tough. I think the number of deaths now is 36,000, and we're almost at 700,000 diagnosed. We hit 1 million. That's 1 million people diagnosed with COVID is one person out of 320 in the country. It's amazing when you think about that. And that's the ones that we know about. Okay, there's a lot of people we're not going to know about. So Trump understands what's going on here. So he's trying to get things back to the way they were, so he can argue that it was hyped and it was exaggerated. He's a very good communicator, actually.
Well, bottom line is we see exactly what's going on, and he can run away from it. You're right. Everybody wants to dance around it. To me, this is one of those deals where if you're Fauci, that's where you say, I dare you to fire me. I dare you. In this moment, look, stop trying to sit here and, make him feel good. No. You go up there and you say, you go up there and say, I'm going to tell the truth. I dare your ass to fire me.
That's right.
Yeah, go ahead and fire the leading expert in the middle of an international pandemic.
It likely will.
If you think you got a problem right now, go ahead.
I think Fauci can hold on to this position. If things get a lot worse and they hit the 100,000 number that was originally predicted by Dr. Birx, and the Surgeon General, then he may, because Fauci is going to have to sound the alarm if things get worse. But it's good that he's back there because you need somebody with a brain in their head back there. I suspect he's not the only one. The question is who has the guts to cross the president publicly. And from what I can see, he's the only person back there that has the guts to cross the president and get fired as a result.
Yeah, that's them
and some of the reporters.
No, and that's my point. You use the fact that you have an 87% approval rating,
right,
and you say,
right,
I dare you.
That's right.
I dare you. And I want you to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications.